And welcome back. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use the set offsets method in the Witty library. And this method is part of the Witty widget and Witty web widget and a couple of other widgets that inherit from these classes. Now, I'm going to do a disclaimer in this video. In these tutorial series, I want to make sure I come off as being as real as possible because, to be honest with you, I am not a CSS expert. I am not a guru. But what I am trying to do is show you how this C++ framework relates to CSS and HTML when you're trying to use it for programming and web development purposes. So let's go ahead and get started. What I have here is a is a project, and I really want to use this at the end, but just so you can see what the code is doing. Of course we've declared our application. We have a container widget. Inside of that container we have a Witty text widget, and as you can see the parent is container, and then we set properties on the container so it can be visible, and we position it on the screen. We've set the background color of the container to yellow. We've set the border to black, and it is thick and it's solid. We've set the positioning scheme to relative because you have to set a positioning scheme of either relative, fixed, or absolute when you're talking about using set offsets. And we set the margin so I want you to see what the difference is between margin and padding. So I've set the margin and padding. And then we've actually called the set offsets. Basically, offsets, from what I've seen, is the CSS positionings of left, right, top, and bottom. In our case, I've left the defaults. I have not set the sides for any of these methods. So you have a margin of 20 pixels for all sides, a padding of 10 pixels for all sides, an offset for the left, the right, the top, the bottom of 100 pixels for all sides. And I've also, and just know this as well, margin has a margin top, margin bottom, margin left, margin right, padding left, padding right, padding top, padding bottom. And like I said, I have not specified any side. It's kind of like what you do in CSS when you do margin, colon, and then 20 pixels. It applies it to all sides. And then I went ahead and resized the container widget to 160 pixels by 120 pixels. And I've set the background color of our root container to a color of blue. Again, so you can see the container more visually on the web page. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to compile this. And that's really, I wanted to leave that for the end, so we'll come back to it again. Okay, so if we run the server, then let me find the example. It's not that. That's where I actually got the example from. If we do a refresh, and the browser that I'm using, and I really shouldn't say it was 22 pixels. Let's try that again. Let's move this down. I shouldn't say it was 22 pixels, but I'll just leave that as is for right now. As you can see from the example, I have Google Chrome up and running. I've hit F12 on the keyboard so you can bring up, the console, the elements, and look at our sources. What you want to do is you want to look at your HTML, collapse the body, go down, collapse the bottom div, which is our root container. As you can see, it's all blue. It doesn't take up the entire page. You scroll down a little bit more, go down inside of that div, and then highlight this, and that is the container, and here is your text widget. You see the square border around it. So you have your container widget, and then you have your text widget. And then if we click on that, look at what's going on right here. We have our background color, we have our borders being set, our margins, and then our offsets. And then we even have our width and our height that we set in our code, 160 by 120 pixels. So if we go ahead and uncheck, let's see what margin does when we uncheck it. Margin top, look what happens. It sets the margin for our container widget. So if we uncheck that, uncheck that, uncheck that, and uncheck that, see how it moved the widget over? So that is essentially what margin is doing when we call set margin. Now if we look at padding, we look at 10 pixels, see what it does? There was padding around the text relative to the parent. We just unchecked it of 10 pixels and it got rid of the 10 pixels. And then if we look at the border, when you set your border, you see what it does with the border. So you can see the Witty library has done a real good job in when you call these functions, you know, set border on your decoration style object as part of your widgets. It sets the border correctly, it does the padding, it does the margins. But let's look at set offsets. Set offsets, we give it a length of 100 pixels, and we applied it to all sides. So the offset, again, like I was saying, was the left, the right, the top, the bottom. Notice how all of them are 100 pixels. So if we get rid of the left, it moves it back over 100 pixels. Check it back, it puts it back 100 pixels to the right, and you'll probably have to get rid of the left. But notice how it's kind of off, because if you do the left, get rid of the left, it does that, and if you check it again, you see that? Well, it's actually supposed to move that over. That's why I've had problems with the left and the bottom properties. But if you uncheck the top, it moves it back 100 pixels up. The bottom doesn't do anything. But there must be, I don't know if there's a bug with Witty or with the browser being implemented in Chrome. But as you can see, the set offsets, again, all it is doing is setting properties for the CSS positionings of left, right, top, and bottom. So that's when you're using that method, just know that when you set the sides, the left, the right, the top, the bottom, you know, when you're looking at the documentation, I think, let me see, if I bring this over, if you look at the set offsets, it says it sets the CSS offsets for a non-statically positioned widget. So just know that you have to set the position scheme to either relative, absolute, or static for this to even take place, for you to even see the difference. So just know when you use this method, you have to set the position scheme. You don't have to use set margin or set padding, but you have to set position scheme, and then this will take care of moving the widget over to the left, the right, the top, and the bottom when we're in relation to the Witty library. So that is this tutorial when talking about the offset and positioning using the Witty library. I will see you in the next lesson. Bye bye.